This is a Haag-Streit BI slit lamp, and sometimes there's an issue with the alignment where the images are skewed or asymmetrical depending on which way you flip the mag changer. It can change one way or the other. They're not even. And that could be an indication that there's an issue going on inside the mag changer assembly that needs to be addressed. So first thing I would do is make sure that I'm in focus on the 1x and the 1.6x, both of them, with a focus rod. Make sure that you start off with good focus, because you're going to need to readjust the 1.6x focus at the end of the procedure. So, as in like the BC models, there's the BC and the BD models, there's a yellow filter. We're going to have to take that off, and probably now's a good time to do it while it's still attached. There's another video on how to do that, but basically it's tapping each ear with a hammer and something that won't break it. And remember, there's a little tab on here, and that's going to go in the slot when you put it back on. So that little tab is going to be important later when you're putting it back on. So it's going to be easier to work on it if we take the head off. Underneath are two larger Allens and then two safety screws. The safety screws are just holding in the prism assembly sections of each eye. But first we'll take off the two 3mm Allens. You can take one off without holding it down, but a screw with a couple of washers on there. When you're taking off the second one, make sure you've got your hand on it. You don't want to lose it. Hold on to that head. Now you'll notice the base of it. There's two pins that holds it in place. So there's no adjustment by turning the binocular head, no alignment. And under here are access to the safety screws. We'll take those out. Now that we've taken those two screws out, we can go ahead and take off each prism assembly. Just twist it gently as you're turning it and pulling out. we need to get into the screws that are down there. There's a plate that's holding the assembly together. We need to get to those screws, but the way to get to it is not as easy as the old style, where you could just turn your mag changer, unscrew these lenses, and you could have quick access to the screws. But now they've designed it where these lenses do not screw in, they go in and out, and they are held in position with screws, lock screws up here, and these affect your focus. So what's important to take note of is make sure you mark one side or the other, which lens goes with which side, or just remember that your screws are up here, or there's probably going to be a little indentation underneath the screw where it originally was. So I'm not sure about the alignment, may not make a difference, but the focal distance does. So we're going to remove these two screws. I'm going to mark which side goes where and remove our screws here. Just a word of caution about these screws. They are very delicate. These set screws, they're made of steel, but this housing is aluminum, and it's very delicate. I broke the screw on this one, and wasn't easy to get out. A fellow tech helped me get it. He got it out for me, and I replaced it with a regular screw, 2mm screw. But these screws are very delicate. It doesn't look like they have any kind of glue on them, but there may be some glue or polish on those screws. It didn't look like it, but be sure to soak them, the screws, with some acetone or alcohol or something, and be careful. I'm using a 1.5 by 40, and I've already loosened them, but one of them broke, and I'm going to replace it with the screw. I'll take it out and show you how delicate it is, or how small it is. That's all it is. It's a 2mm set screw, and I'm replacing it with a 2 by 3 regular screw, Phillips screw. But that's important to get these off. If you can't get these off, if you've broken it, you've got to get those off, or you're not going to be able to get any further. So if you can't get those off, I don't know how, you're not going to be able to get through and do the rest of the procedure. But hopefully you've gotten them off. And even these, when I had the screw off, the lens wasn't coming out, so I heated it with a heat gun, and then they were able to come out. So that's going to be a biggie on this procedure. I've marked them. Now that we've got those lenses off, we have access. We have access to our screws on plates that are holding the mag changer mechanism in place. So we're going to take those off. Those are Torx 10. And while you're at it, you might as well take this bottom Torx 25 screw. This is holding your spring and the bearing underneath it. There's a bearing inside. Here are the plates and the screws. They're just very thin pieces of metal. Now that we've got our screws and plates off, I'm going to go ahead and take the front lever and cover plate off. That's going to be a Torx 10. Now when you're putting it back together, when you're trying to align your lever, just remember you can just slide it down and turn it and then push it back into a position and see if that's a better position when you're lining it up later. Okay, I'm going to take that off, and this should be moving freely. If not, you should take that off and clean that and re-grease it. Okay, now we've got the front off. We're just going to pull it out. Might have to wiggle it a little bit as it's coming out. So be careful about these pieces in here. I think that has to do with the cameras. So be careful about that. So on the inside, these are the stops. These are the pins that stop the mag changer. And on this one, we have another pin right there. And that pin is sticking out too far. It should not be out that far. I'm going to get a measure and see how long it is. As we look at inside, we can see where there's the paint is scraped off a little bit. That near that pin and near that pin. And evidently the pin is hitting this edge prematurely, or this is hitting here somewhere. It's just not able to hit flushly against the pin because it's too long. First thing we're going to do is measure the length of our stop pin so that when we knock it in, we'll be able to see how much we moved it in. And looking at this, it looks like it's about 8.5 millimeters. And there's a hole that's all the way through here, this plate, and behind it there's a space. You can see the edge of the pin through here, and you can see there's space. We're going to try to knock it so that it's just below this plate. We don't want to put any pressure on this plate because this is the alignment. This is the housing for your lens. We don't want to mess with that. We don't want to affect that. But we're going to try to push this pin a little bit further, almost or barely touching the edge, and see if that, well, that's going to give us the clearance because that's as far as it can go. And apparently, through time, it has slipped out. When it's time to knock the pin in, we want to stabilize this surface, something solid, so that when we're hitting the pin, it will go through. So I've set up some lead weights here, and I'm going to put an edge here on this surface, not on this lens holder. The surface right here and right there. If you can stabilize it on that, something solid. I've lined these up so that it's resting here and here, and it's solid. And getting a little hammer and tapping it. Try to tap it flat and just do it a little bit and then measure and see if it moves. And another way you can tell if it's moving or not, look in and at your space and see if you can see the pin coming through. And once you're beginning to be able to see the pin, then you're probably there. If you can see the pin, that it's almost hitting the plate, you might be close enough. Just be careful. Each time you tap, continue to measure and view to ensure you're not going too far. And I've already done this. It took about three tries because I wanted to be careful. And then when I could see it was really close to this lens holder, then I knew we were good. So now as I measure it, now we have about 7.5 millimeters. So we knocked it in a millimeter, and that was all it needed. So whatever the official clearance is, I don't know, but it looks like that's a little over 7 millimeters, and it's almost to the edge. So I think we're going to stop there. So if yours is much more than that, you know you will have to knock it in. Okay. Once you have your pin knocked in, we want to glue it in place. And what you can do is get a toothpick or something and put some super glue on your little toothpick pointer and then put it around the pin. Super glue and put it around that pin. What I did is Put a little bit of super glue on the tip of a toothpick and then just go around the pin. Once we've super glued our pin in and it's dried, you want to clean your lenses of dust and fingerprints using Windex, your cotton swabs, and your hurricane blower. Get those lenses clean, and it's time to reassemble. Your pin is going to go down that direction. So we'll put that back down. Make sure your bearing is free. Spin it. Make sure it's free. And depending on how sticky it was before, you may have to clean this post and re-lube that. Flip it back into place. Wiggle it if you have to. Now we're going to put our plates in, and I just wanted to show you where those thin plates that we took off. There's a little ridge on the shaft that when you put your plates on, they go in there again, and our screws. And we'll put those in, still in, make sure your bearing is still inside. And we'll put our spring in, and our Torx 25 screw. These plates are pretty thin. You break a little cotton swab down and place it in the hole. One thing about this plate, if you remember, it slid inside the grooves of that shaft. So when we drop it down, you may have to turn the plate to go inside that groove so that it's lying flat. So even though you drop this plate in, you may have to turn it while it's down there so that it goes into the shaft. Now once you have them in place, since the screws aren't steel, they're stainless steel, so they're not magnetic, you can put a little dab of grease on the tip of your, either the screw or your Torx, so it will hold in place and go down gently. Pull your Q-tip up carefully. So your plates should be flat, and they're now holding your mag changer in place. We have our spring already in there, so now we can turn it over and put our lever back on, and I would say it's going to be about like right there. It's down. Now I'm going to push it up into position and hold my finger there and then check, see if it's about the same. Keep messing with it until you think like you have the same space. You can go ahead and put your screws in. If there's a little bit of resistance, you might want to loosen these and push your plate down a little bit to give it a little more space, and then tighten it and see if that frees it up. We can go ahead and put our prism assemblies back in. You'll notice that's where the safety screw goes, so that's always going to be on the bottom. The flat side is towards the center, so you know which side is which. Turn it as you're inserting it. Both sides. And now we can put our safety screws back in. Okay, we can go ahead and now install it back onto our slit lamp. It's just going to be 2 screws, the 2 screws we took out, and of course the pins will go where they go. And once we have it installed on the slit lamp, we can go ahead and put our 1.6 lenses back in and get ready to set up our focus rod and adjust our focus. Once we have it installed back on the slit lamp, we will have to turn our light on and check our focus again at the 1x, 10x to verify that it's still in focus, and then turning it to 1.6 and moving the lenses in and out until that is focused, and then tighten your screw. So that may take a while to get it right. It's going to be delicate. You can screw your screws in almost all the way so that they're just enough to move it in and out. And once you get it where you like it, you can tighten up your screw and then check it. Continue to check it to make sure it's still back in focus. And once you've done that, then it's time to put your yellow filter back on. Remember that the tab, find the tab and find out where the tab, the groove on your head goes, and that's where it's going to go back in, and tap it gently until it snaps back into place. Once you have everything put back together, you can check your alignment to see if the misalignment or the skew is gone, so that whether you flip it one way or the other, your view is one. So I hope that helps out. It is a little bit difficult, especially the set screws on your 1.6x lenses. Those can be a challenge to get off. So you can look at the procedure and determine if it's something you are capable of attempting and completing. If not, you can send it to Haag-Streit, and it may be a while because they may have to send it to Switzerland. And if you do, you'll have to send both the head and the arm. They need both connected together to verify your alignment.